Grüß, willkommen in einem Ananin Dragons video. Welcome to another exciting video, in this case part 22 of my Star Trek TOS timeline series of videos. In this video, I will cover the Federation Klingon War, which I think occurred between 2242 and 2245, and a possible Romulan Klingon minor war in 2240, as well as covering the later short-term war between the Federation and Klingon in the 2260s. Just to remind viewers, the TOS timeline is not our timeline, nor is it the TNG timeline. I'm only focusing on information contained in the TOS series. If information from later series does not conflict with TOS script, then I will use it as much as possible. This video is covering events which we have very little script-based information about. As is my normal process, let's first go through all the script-based related information concerning the events which occurred between 2240 and 2245. We know from Errant of Mercy, negotiations broken down and the Federation and Klingons are at war in, possibly, 2264. Organia is the only inhabited planet in the disputed area, so the war may have occurred because of this disputed area. We also learn in Errant of Mercy, when a Klingon conquers a planet, they occupy it with an occupation force. The Federation point of view is they are organised into vast slave labour camps. No freedom whatsoever, your goods will be confiscated, hostages taken and killed, your leaders confined. The Klingon point of view is you are now subjects of the Klingon Empire. You'll find there are many rules and regulations. They will be posted. Violation of the smallest of them will be punished by death. Should one Klingon soldier be killed, 1,000 Organians will die. I will have order. Is that clear? Also in this episode we learned that the Klingons had invaded Federation space, killing Federation citizens. Although it couldn't have been in this war, it must have been in some previous war. Quote is, Kirk states, we have legitimate grievances against the Klingons. They've invaded our territory, killed our citizens. They've openly aggressive. They've boasted they'll take over half the galaxy. This is almost certainly an earlier war, as the Klingons have not invaded in this war. A Cold War has clearly occurred, possibly after the initial war, up to the current war. Core states, why not? We are stronger, you've tried to hem us in, cut off vital supplies, strangle our trade. You've been asking for war. It seems the Organians have the ability to see the future, stating a war will occur in the future, followed by cooperation. The Organian are Laboran states, so eventually you will have peace, but only after millions of people have died. It is true that in the future you and the Klingons will become fast friends, you will work together. As a result, we can expect additional conflicts in the future, although I suspect it's not a world war situation similar to the Federation or United Earth and the Romulans. It's probably lots of brushfire wars occurring. For this particular war in 2264, the Organians stopped the war, and the Organian Peace Treaty is the result. In Friday's Child, we learn the Klingon Empire is made up of conquered world, which implies they do not undertake a colonisation program, but instead a conquest program. The Battle of Donut 5 between the Federation and Klingons occurred 23 years prior, which would make it 2242. In the Tribbles, we discover Sherman's planet is claimed by the Federation and Klingons after the Battle of Donatu and after the Organian peace. In the Day of the Dove, we discover a Klingon spacecraft has a crew of 400. I assume this spacecraft is a Klingon capital ship. In the episode The Day of the Dove, we discover that Klingon planets may be poor, resulting in a more aggressive history for the Klingons. The Federation fought and won a battle at Axanar. The Federation commander was Garth, and this may have occurred in 2245, based on my guess of Garth's age in 2266, and the earliest he could have been a fleet commander. This had to be after 2242. Kirk may have visited Axanar about 2254 or later as a cadet on a peace mission. Perhaps it was to bring Axanar into the Federation. Perhaps it was to stop another war in 2254. There are no clues in the scripts of any war around this time frame, so it's most likely a minor war between non-Federation planets. The largest war between the Federation and Klingons, according to the TOS script, was the one which resulted in the Battle of Donatu 5 in 2242. This could have continued until 2245 or even later. What I find confusing is why didn't the Romulans take advantage of this? They had 3 years to assemble their forces and join the Klingons in a war against the Federation. It would require both nations to meet and cooperate, so this clearly never occurred, and understanding why provides us with a valuable clue of Klingon-Romulan relations. It appears that it was very, very bad. If both nations engaged in hostile actions prior to 2242, that's Romulans and Klingons, it would explain why the Romulans were not going to join the Klingons. They did not trust the Klingons and would have worried that the Klingons would sue for peace and leave the Romulans fighting the Federation alone. It's important to remember the Federation was economically more powerful than individually the Romulans and probably individually the Klingons as well. The Federation was probably militarily more powerful as well as being economically more powerful, as they were able to match the Klingons in 2264 while still defending the Romulan borders. If my estimate of the expansion of the territories of the humans, Klingons and Romulans is correct, the Klingons and Romulan borders would have been in contact about 2240. There is a later Next Generation episode which deals with this called Yesterday's Enterprise and set in the 24th century when a Federation starship assists a Klingon outpost against the Romulans. However, this does not explain why they did not join forces in the 23rd century to attack the Federation. It's logical to assume that when both empires, Klingon and Romulans, came in contact with each other, they engaged in some form of military conflict. This could have lasted many years or just a single year, but after both empires sized each other up, they may have got into an uneasy truce. After all, they both knew if they engaged in an all-out war with each other, the Federation would probably benefit. The presence of the Federation may have limited any possible war, which means the Klingons may have known of the Federation in 2240. As both the Federation and Klingons were known to have been close to each other, both sides would have sent out exploration ships beyond their territories, thus discovering each other. If such a war did occur, 2240 or at the very latest 2241 would have been the year any Klingon-Romulan war ended. I suspect it was only a short and sharp affair with the Klingons and Romulans trying to take over the same minor planet, resulting in a military action which resulted in a stalemate. As we have absolutely no information of this conflict, it could be anything that you may think it could be. As long as the losses were low, it was a stalemate and resulted in an uneasy truce. 2 years after this possible Klingon-Romulan war ended, the Klingons were in a dispute with the Federation. The dispute seemed to be over a planet called Donatu 5, based on the later 2264 war. I suspect the possible sequence of events may have been the following. When the Klingons expanded, they feel that territory beyond their most forward conquest is still their territory. This may have well included Donatu 5, which may have been an inhabited alien planet. Close by was an uninhabited planet called Sherman's planet, which was the cause of a future issue. The Federation may have made contact with this planet, that's Donatu 5, and established friendly relations. They may have even established a peace agreement with the planet. This was probably beyond Federation space and in between the Klingons and Federation. The Klingons probably considered this as a threat, or may have only been vaguely aware of the Federation and simply planned to take this planet as their next conquest. They may have attacked and invaded the planet, with the Federation responding and sending a fleet into Donatu 5, which fought a battle which was indecisive. There is also a possibility that Klingons actually invaded Federation territory, as Kirk claimed in Errant of Mercy that the Klingons had invaded and killed Federation citizens. It's unlikely he was talking about the short-lived war in 2264, as the main fighting was occurring in neutral territory, so this must have occurred earlier. Because Kirk's claims the Klingons invaded Federation space and killed Federation citizens, I suspect the Federation withdrew from Donatu 5 with the Klingons following. The Klingons may have entered Federation space and killed Federation citizens, which resulted in the Battle of Axanar. The battle was a Federation victory, resulting in the Klingons withdrawing. Another possible option is a Korea-like war, with one side being a Klingon-conquered client state, let's say Donatu 5, and the Federation ally being Axanar. Historically, a good parallel would be North Korea invasion of South Korea. A Klingon subject nation could have attacked a Federation member, and both sides wanted to limit the scope of the war in the area. In this case, the Federation can say the Klingons invaded and killed Federation citizens. This would have triggered a Cold War or escalated it, culminating in a hair-trigger situation. Using our Korea example, that war began in 1950, and in 1963 we have the Cuban Missile Crisis. Thus, it's possible, by triggering a Cold War by this invasion, 20 years later the war could have become hot over some neutral planet, which is, what occurred in the episode Errant to Mercy. Anyway, this is a possible guess of what occurred in 2245. I'm uncertain what scenario is most likely, but the result would have been the following. A battle at Donna 25, which was indecisive, Federation space invaded and Federation citizens killed, a battle at Axanar which resulted in a Federation victory. I feel the key point is, if the Battle of Donna 25 were indecisive, why would there be Federation territory invaded and citizens killed? My only guess is the Klingons managed to take Donna 25 and the Federation failed to dislodge the Klingons and were forced to retreat. Any Klingon attack of Federation space would have brought up unpleasant memories of the Romulan invasion, so I expect the Federation went all out and fully mobilised. But they would have been outnumbered for at least a year, so I suspect a lot of desperate fighting in 2243 and 2244, and resulting in a decisive victory at Axanar in 2245. I know there is a fan movie concerning this victory at Axanar, which was a desperate, hard-fought battle which would have resulted in the Federation destruction if lost. I see no evidence of this in the TOS script. I mean, there was a battle, but it wasn't desperate to that level. It's possible in the TNG timeline this is a viable situation, but I've not studied the TNG script, so as a result I am uncertain. I did really love the Axanar trailer, and I'm still waiting for the movie, in which I suspect will never come out, because I think it would be great. I suspect, but on the other hand, I suspect it has little to do with the TOS timeline. Let's look at what I consider is the most likely scenario on my map. This shows the possible map of the combatant positions and the war itself. The Klingons have a common border with both the Romulans, and they've just contacted the Federation. Some form of conflict occurred between the Klingons and Romulans in 2240. The extent and size is unknown, but it would have been short and resulted in a stalemate. Possibly both combatants did not want to go all out because there was the Federation present. One interesting thought is the Romulans may have captured a Klingon spacecraft and started to reverse engineer warp drive. It could explain why the Romulans showed up with a Klingon-type warship in a later episode, the Enterprise incident. Moving forward to 2242, while certainly beyond Klingon space, the Klingons may have felt Donna 25 was within Klingon territory or interest, and Federation involvement with the planet may have instigated a Klingon attack, resulting in an indecisive battle. As the Klingons probably advance after this, I expect the Klingons did take Donna 25, and the indecisive battle was a Federation attempt to retake it, which failed. After the failure to push the Klingons out, the Klingons then advanced into Federation space, taking some colony planets and killing Federation citizens. At some point they would have been checked by Federation forces. Probably another indecisive battle would have been the result of this. In 2244, the Federation now launches a counterattack, pushing the Klingons out of Federation space, or perhaps only to its borders. In 2245, the decisive Battle of Axanar occurs, which results in a Federation victory. I'm uncertain where Axanar was. It could have been a Federation member or a Federation ally outside of Federation space. I suspect the latter. I also assume Donna 25 is liberated as a result of this victory, although this is not 100% clear. As you can see, this war was nowhere on the same scale as the United Earth-Romulan War. It was not a war of survival and probably only involved comparatively small forces. It's unlikely both nations mobilised their entire fleet to battle it out. However, I expect both sides fed forces into the combat zone as quickly as possible, and when it became obvious the Federation was able to pump in more than the Klingons probably decided to call it a day. After all, the Romulans were hovering around and could take advantage of the situation. One interesting point was the first Constitution-class starship is launched in 2244, so it's possible it may have been involved in the Federation victory at Axanar. The Enterprise may have been launched in 2245, so it was probably not involved in the battle, but if it was late in 2245 and the Enterprise shot out as quickly as it could, it may have also been involved in the battle. The Starfleet ships which were involved in this war are probably in this slide. I suspect the primary ships used in the war was what's called the Siegfried class. It's hard to know what is a warship and what is a civilian ship in this chart, but others may be able to make more sense of it. As for the Klingon ships, this lists their ships from 2240 to 2249, which would place it right in the middle of the Klingon Federation War. I have no idea how accurate these charts are, but the vessels used here would have been similar to those used during Kirk's 5-year mission. Personally, there seems to be far too many different ship types here. The Klingon fleet consisted of about 8 capital ships in 2264. There were more battleships and dreadnought ship classes than capital ships used in the Klingon. There are more battleships and dreadnought class ships in these two slides here than capital ships were used in the Klingon fleet in 2264. So I think they've probably gone really overboard here. As for the number of ships that were used in this war, I have no real solid data, but based on the number of Constitution-class starship in the Federation fleet in, let's say, 2264, each side probably had about 24 capital ships. Let's say 12 were current and 12 were last generation. And I would expect that this war here would have been lucky to, consist of more than maybe 6 capital ships, maybe 12 if you really want to put a stretch on it. And so we come to an end of my part 22, my Star Trek TOS timeline, in this case covering the Federation Klingon War, which I think occurred between 2242 and 2245, and a possible Romulan-Klingon minor war in 2240. The episode scripts can be found using the URL shown. Alle guten Dingen, kommen zu einem Ende.